I'm very excited that we could actually get on here today. This is something that I've been wanting to do for a while with you, and I'm sure, I kept reaching out and I kept poking and maybe even bugging you. But again, I'm glad that we could actually get on here today. So thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, I'm Jill Johanningmeier. I do have a life after story. My life after story more is my life started at 38 years old and continues to get bigger and bigger and more beautiful than I ever thought imaginable. So, yeah, I've got a personal struggle with addiction, and I live my recovery very loud. I tell my story often in the recovery community to that audience, and apparently I might reach somebody in your audience, but I hope that's what I'm doing today.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So why don't we, before we dive into the story, which to me it's an amazing story, why don't you just talk about kind of just a little bit about your background and your childhood and where you grew up? Let's talk about that first.
Yeah, you bet. I am from Colorado. My folks got a divorce when I was about 11 years old. It's 11, 12 in that time frame. I can identify that as being the first time that I became uncomfortable in my skin, so to speak. And everything that I wasn't enough. And I spent a lifetime kind of struggling to fit in my skin. I found that substances at a very early age was something that made me more, I don't know, it was like that social lubricant um, that continued to work and just kind of expanded. So, yeah, I've got an awesome family, a very supportive family. So it wasn't really, the traumatic childhood by any stretch. It just, I can identify that when they got a divorce, that became, I don't know, it's something that I just didn't work with. Very uncomfortable.
No. Joe, what age was that when that happened with your parents?
When that was going on, I was 11 to 12 years old. I did start a new school in sixth grade, and definitely can look back on that as being the time where I had to change everything about who I was, everything the way I was going. Seeking attention, was a big part of that, stealing for that excitement. Yeah, I think that, it was definitely alcohol at a young age. I remember the first time I drank, it was alcoholically, like off the bat. And then the things that surrounding it was hiding it. And it just kind of modeled the way that I continued to do things throughout life. And then, yeah, as the years progressed, it was more of an excitement to add something new to it and experiment with other things. And the culture around it became the exciting uh, thing for me until it wasn't.
Right. And so as a young kid, just experimenting like a lot of kids do, looking back, I mean, was it more just experimenting? Was it more trying to mask or cover, the situation that was going on? I mean, what
Yeah.
were the negatives at that time for you, Joe?
Yeah, I think it was both. I think it was just a cycle of things. There was a lot of drinking to cover up shame and guilt of things that I had done. And yeah, I think the biggest part of all of it is just to feel comfortable with who I was or wasn't. I was definitely living, thinking that who I was wasn't enough. So it was that it was a mask. It is the
Mhm.
best way to. I think you nailed it.
Right, absolutely. So for me, and honestly, I don't remember the first time I got to meet you. Obviously, I went to see you play football up there from 2000 to 2004. Your father at the time owned a restaurant where we all used to hang out at or even work at. Some of the
Yeah.
players I know they were able to work there. But how did you end up in Boulder?
Ended up in Boulder. We would start at this sports bar very close to Folsom Field, park there, drink there, walk over to the field and watch my cousin play ball. So my cousin Ryan played up at CU, and 99 was his senior year. So it was 99 when we purchased that bar. I was the active manager over there and loved it. That's where I got to meet you guys. My yeah, so that's kind of how that happened. I moved myself and my small child up there, and we lived there for 5 years and ran that restaurant. So.
Yep. And the restaurant was the Barrel House, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It
Right.
was
Okay.
2005 when we closed.
So 2005 was, yeah, and my last year in Boulder was 2004. So just right after I was done in Boulder. So let's fast forward, Jill. Obviously, from childhood, like a lot of kids, like I said, you go through divorce as a young kid, don't know how to deal with it, don't know why. Is it your fault?
A great time in my life, but also a really pivotal time in my life. So running that bar, I'm in my early 20s, and on top of the world. I own this restaurant. All my friends are on the football team, so we own that town, right?
Mhm.
I mean, it was nonstop fun, but here's the thing: it was nonstop fun surrounding like this substance that is, it's got a good hold on me. I don't believe that I have a problem with alcohol at this point because I'm at a restaurant that pushes the alcohol. And I run a promotion company, and all my clients were in the liquor industry, so we were pushing different the alcohol at different bars and nightclubs. So my entire world was surrounded by alcohol, and that's the college lifestyle. It was all happening there. I was I injured my ankle. But, years later, a surgeon will tell me it's genetic. I've got loose ligaments. I can tell you that the truth was it was mostly alcohol and high heels, but I had to get an ankle reconstruction and was introduced to pain medication at that time. So it was more than alcohol at that point. It's alcohol and pain pills, and that's really where that became. Um, yeah, my new drug of choice, and it's a pretty powerful one. I used pain medication from 2002 until I was 38 years old in 2015, and
Mhm.
yeah, that problem got massive. Um, yeah,
Yeah, no, and honestly, thank you for sharing that because I know it's a personal thing that you went through, and I think it's hard to talk about whether it's for you or for a lot of people. But just to recap, I know a lot of people. I had a lot of friends that were, in restaurants, behind the bar, serving alcohol, worked in nightclubs, late nights, and it's very easy for you to fall into that lifestyle. Obviously, going into it, it's a lot of fun, and you get to be around great people and you get a party, which is obviously amazing. But then there's a darker side that people don't really understand. And I know, again, just from friends that have been in that business and that industry, it's very easy to kind of go probably a little further than you should, and then just get caught up in that lifestyle. And it might start out as drinking, and then obviously for you, Jill, you had the surgery. Um, just like any doctor, they prescribe these painkillers, and again, depending on the person, uh, it can be addicting, and it's very addictive, and it's a huge epidemic that we have today. So kind of how did you deal with that, Jill? Like coming into that lifestyle, having the surgery, getting on pain medicine, and then needing more. Kind of what happened, for you from that point going forward.
sure. I can remember back when it was a choice whether I was gonna use this substance or not. And the problem with that is at some point there's no longer a choice. You're physically addicted to this drug. And I know that even when I first had a physical um, addiction towards it, I told myself that it wasn't. I remember using the word I'm dependent. And that's how I kind of justified things in my mind about how things were going with that. But I continued to drink and use any substance that was in front of me. These problems just morph, and really it was like whether we're talking about the substance or not, Marcus, what it came down to, it was a problem with me. I wasn't comfortable with me, and these things were just new different ways to do things. I often will share about how it was my solutions were a different drug, and that always led me to like the next big problem. You know, is I found out that I go through blackouts when I drink. Like I don't remember things. I've embarrassed myself, and I don't remember how or why or what was said. I found with the pain pills that wasn't really a thing. So kind of justified that this is my new, proper drug to use. And it presented a whole new level of problems. So, yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. And for me, I love to hear it because I personally haven't dealt with that, but I know a lot of people do. And that's what I want people to listen to and hear today is that I know there's a lot of people dealing with that right now as we speak. And Jill, I know you and I have mutual friends that have dealt with the same thing. And so what would you, give from an advice standpoint to someone listening today from where you've been and where you're at today?
Sure. And you've mentioned that we've got a lot of friends in common who suffer from this too. And I think that the thing that I'm most passionate about now is to like dissolve the stigma around addiction because it doesn't discriminate. This happens to anybody. I have, my cousin is somebody who's just like this brilliant man and is insanely talented athlete. And, this happens to him. I, work with people who are from all backgrounds. This doesn't discriminate. So I think that like, from a party standpoint, that's where it starts with everybody. And then, when it becomes, a thing where there's not a choice anymore whether you do this or not, and it's just something that you have to do, um, eh, that's when I knew I was different. And that's when I knew like this is I'm an addict, and today I'm very proud of that. But that is something that I fought with until I was 38. To be like I need help. Really proud. Thinking I can do this on my own. I can figure out how to get off of this. And like I mentioned, it's like my answer of how to like tackle these problems was with a different substance. The solutions were presented for me. When I finally did say I need help and went to treatment. But it was a lot of pain that happened before I did that. So I think I really hope that if you're questioning if you've got an addiction thing or that you're struggling with it, then you probably are. It's my experience that people who don't have a problem with drugs or alcohol don't question it. So, and there's a lot of treatment options and a lot of resources within a community that you can go to that I didn't know about. And I'm really passionate about helping people find those things because you don't have to hurt as long as I did. And yeah.
Right, right. No, thank you very much. So what about, I mean, when we're talking about these issues, drugs, alcohol, addiction, it's very easy to talk about loss. Jill, for you, can you talk about any personal loss that you've had or you've dealt with directly?
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, I'd like to think that once I'm in recovery, that the loss will stop. But the demographic of people I work with, it's unfortunately it's a very common occurrence. But it's definitely part of this thing. It's a deadly disease. A huge part of why I ended up finding recovery. I've mentioned how important, my cousin was to, why I'm involved, in a restaurant up in Boulder and why I know you. And some of these awesome athletes at CU is because my incredibly talented cousin played up there. We're very close, and he was prescribed pain medication as well for injuries that
Mhm.
he had in football. And his path looked like mine. It was something that was there to help with the pain and became something that you're dependent on. And I think that there's a lot of struggle with what do I do now that I'm no longer playing football. And I think that he definitely went through some personal emotional stuff with that. And frankly, drugs and alcohol for an addict or an alcoholic absolutely help you through the day to day. I ended up, using with this person, who I call my brother, right? It's my cousin, but we're very, very close. I ended up finding my cousin dead March 9th of 2015,
Mhm.
and he had died of an overdose. There was a lot of guilt and shame around that because we were doing this thing together. And I didn't reach out to tell our families, who love us very much and are very supportive families, that this was happening, that he was basically knocking on death's door. And it's a big part of why I do what I do today, Marcus.
Yeah.
When I got into recovery 6 months after his passing, I I remember being told by somebody very important to me that the best way that I can free myself of the guilt and to honor his memory is to, as a healthy person in recovery, show people how they can survive this thing. And I take it very seriously.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's not the last person that I've loved and lost to this. But I do everything I can to make sure that that happens as little as possible.
Right. And again, thank you, Jill, for sharing that, because obviously there's a reason why I asked that question. And I know it's very obviously deep and emotional and even hard to talk about today, and for you, that was, not just a cousin, but almost like a brother. And unfortunately, when we're talking about these situations, um, most times or majority of the time, these are things that we're not doing or people are not doing by themselves. They're doing it with friends or family members or the circle they run in. And for me, I can imagine having to deal with that, on a personal level, just because of, like you said, the things that you think about, the shame and the guilt, and what else could you have done? What if you would have told family members what was going on? And again, you can't control the outcome because you weren't forcing that person to make those choices. But again, anyone listening today, these are real life after situations that you potentially are going to have to deal with. And Jill, I honestly, I commend you because of where you are at and what you do today. And like you said, you had somebody very important and someone close to you, tell you how you could make a difference going forward. And to me, it sounds like you've dedicated kind of your life's work now, your life after story, helping others recover when it's, drugs, alcohol, and addiction. So I definitely applaud you for what you've been able to do, since then.
Thank you.
So let's talk about kind of, your journey of getting sober. Like I said, it's probably one of the hardest things to do out there today. And again, someone's listening. What do they do? How do they get help? Who do they turn to? It might be hard or embarrassing to talk to close friends and family members. Jill, what can these people do to start that path of recovery?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you a little bit about how I started that path, and that was, just kind of got forced into it. So I'm grateful today that it was a family friend who was close with my cousin, when I that finally said, "Whoa, it's big." I mean, Marcus, my like I said, I've treated one substance for the next. I was using heroin by the very end of this, and it was that family friend that said, "Time out." She called my dad. I went to he actually took me to the emergency room. They suggested I go to a detox. From the detox, I went to a treatment center. And by the time I got to treatment, it was about, okay, guys, I give up. I'm going to trust whatever you guys tell me to do, and I'm going to do that. And I literally took every suggestion that was given to me. I hated most of those suggestions, all of them, most of them, but I
Yeah.
hated them. I didn't like it. It was definitely taking me out of my will, which was frankly why I was in the position I was in. Um, I think that, talking to people about what they should do next, here was where I struggled, is that if I could talk to my family, but they didn't use heroin. So how were they going to help me? Um, my family didn't drink like I did. And these are people that are very loving and supportive, but I didn't expect anybody to understand the problems I had. So, I suggest that people go to these, 12-step support groups. These are free. These are people who, guess what, are just like me, who didn't read about addiction in a book and didn't watch a show on TV about what it's about. I've lived it. There's nothing anybody can tell me that's going to shock me about their addiction, because a good chance that I went through it too. I offer my phone number up to anybody I've worked with. I said, if you see somebody struggling, give them my phone number. So yes, I offer your listeners and watchers to call me. I'll point you off in the right resources. But there's definitely different pathways, and I love that you call it a journey, because that's what it is.
Mhm.
There's constant growth to this, and there's different steps in the process. And I like to think that I'm getting better at navigating all of that every day, and most of that's through my own experience. So
Absolutely. And I just wanted to point out, Jill, the number that was on the screen, is that your personal number?
it is, yeah,
Okay. Can we show that again, Vic?
yeah.
So the number, if you can't see the screen and you're just listening to the audio today, the number for Jill is 720-431-3824. And she's kindly enough giving you her number, someone that's been there, that's done that, has gone through the same path that you might be at today. She's literally telling you to just call her, text her, reach out, and literally ask these questions. This would be between you and her, and she again can share her story, how she found help. So again, Joe, I just appreciate you making that available. And then how about, let's talk about what you're doing now today, Joe.
Yeah.
What are you involved in?
Yeah, and I do want to add too, like, if you call me, you're not putting me out. Literally, like, it's part of why I am sober today, is my opportunity to be able to help other people. So yeah. So what I get to do today, first of all, Marcus, I didn't even mention, like, the reason for my existence is this awesome, amazing 18-year-old daughter that I have. She was 14, going into ninth grade, like literally starting ninth grade when I checked into rehab.
Mhm.
This daughter who's just, like, I was there, and I can say that she was my gravity. She kept me from being this, letting this addiction take me down as fast as I probably would have. But yeah, I've got an amazing relationship with my daughter today, and that's awesome.
Yeah,
Which
no,
is like something that's like really tough for people that go, oh my gosh, you're a mom, how can you like do this? And yeah, moms also struggle with this stuff, but
right.
yeah, I have this very cool relationship with my daughter. I get to work in the addiction field for an awesome person who is, Bryce Hancock is the owner of Mile High Sober Living and Continuing Care. I met him in the recovery community and offered up a house manager position for me. And I took it. And today I get to like run all these sober living houses, with young men, young women, old women, all ages, all backgrounds coming to get sober. So I get to work within that community, and my life is living and breathing recovery, today. And
That's
had you
amazing.
told me I'd be doing this 4 years ago, I would have thought you're into it.
Right, right. So with the facilities that you work out, this would be a facility that someone is dealing and struggling with drugs or alcohol, they could actually come to. And can you explain that process just so people understand, and even myself?
Absolutely, yeah. So sober living and outpatient treatment is part of a continuum of care, as far as, when you're struggling with drugs and alcohol. A lot of people come to sober living and continuing care from a rehab facility, though it's not necessary to start there. Outpatient treatment is, you'll go to groups, you'll meet with a therapist, psychiatrist, and kind of help you with the medical side of it, whereas the sober living environment is living in a supportive environment, with a house manager who's been through it. It's my favorite thing that I heard when I got into treatment is nothing changes if nothing changes.
Mhm.
So when you take the drugs and alcohol out of your life, it's not like, you go to a treatment center, you clean up for 30 days and you're done. It is a lifelong process that we get to do. I'm part of 12-step programs, which is a huge part of what we do in our sober livings, huge part of my recovery. But yeah, I work within a treatment center and sober living that show people how to do life. Marcus, I didn't know how to go to the grocery store sober.
Yeah. Yeah,
It,
no, and I know you're laughing, but these are real things that, that drugs and alcohol, they can obviously cause, and obviously you lived it. And again, I just want to point that out because, again, my goal is for someone to hear this that we don't even know, and whether they're personally dealing with it or someone listening knows a friend or a family member dealing with it. I just hope and I pray that we could actually be a resource for people, because again, this isn't just two people talking today on the podcast and like you said, Jill, read a book or watched something on TV. This is real life, and this is your story and your journey. And luckily, you're in a great place. I know you're doing amazing. I can only speculate in terms of it's not always easy. Like you just mentioned, it's a lifelong journey. You don't go to rehab and 30 days later you're clean, ready to go. This is something that people are always going to continue to deal with, even if they've been clean for 6 months, a year, 5 years. There's always an opportunity of relapsing, and so I just appreciate that you're sharing your story and your insights, because you obviously lived it, Jill.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's
So,
talking to family members. Like I said, over and over again, I have a very supportive family. It, and they were very very awesome when it came time to apologize about things, which is really important process. Piece of the process that we go through is to make an amends. And my family is very forgiving of me, and I feel like I get to give back to families when I have a family member struggling. I talk to sisters who are hurting, and it makes me aware of how bad I hurt my sister. Um, and it's my opportunity to help them out. Same with parents. Daily, I'm speaking with parents for like, what do I do? And I get to meet with mom and the kiddo and say, come on, let's talk. And there is a language of drunk that I speak to another alcoholic that makes sense. And I'm really blessed to have that. And it's
right.
like this shameful, horrible thing about me tends to be my asset today, and how I can be of help to other people. So thank you for this platform, to spread that message.
Right, absolutely. And again, it's truly amazing because again, the goal is that, you've experienced loss, and you personally could have been in that position, and you would have put friends and family member in a position because they could have lost you. And fortunately, that didn't happen. And I know one of your biggest goals is not allowing that to happen to kids or adults, whoever it may be, because you've experienced that, and I know that's something that is heavy on your heart, and you don't want other people to have to experience that as well. So again, I just appreciate you sharing this and opening up and sharing with our viewers, because it's real, and it's a big deal in my opinion today. And the great news is there is help, and until you've actually been through it and you've lived it, it's hard to understand what goes through the mind and the process. And fortunately we have people like you, Jill, that are willing to speak up and again share your story. So again, I just thank you, and I can't thank you enough for sharing this, your story.
Thank you, Marcus.
So, Jill, the last thing I want to ask you is kind of, like you said, 4 or 5 years ago, you obviously didn't pitch yourself where you're at today. What does the next 5 years look like for you? What would your goals be, for you personally, Jill?
I love it. Yeah, it's honestly, like, throughout this process, I can tell you that things continue to work for me just by doing what I love to do. It is insane that I have found my passion and my purpose um, by setting my goal to stay clean. I see myself doing exactly this and just reaching more people. Every day I get to work with awesome people, transforming their lives, and that's where this really pays off. My phone is on 24 hours a day, and yeah, I don't sleep like I used to or like I should, but I don't know. The busier I am doing this, the fuller my life is, and I just see that getting, I don't know, insanely awesome. But I'm really pumped to see like what life brings. But yeah, I'll be doing this. Yeah, this is my purpose.
Absolutely. And to me, I think, we're all, here for a reason. And for whatever reason, you've had to go through the journey that you have. And God willing, you have a lot, to live and to give back. And so I just, again, appreciate you being on the show today. Obviously, we gave our viewers your number. I'll be posting it on all the platforms. Here it is again, 720-431-3824. That's Jill directly. And then again, Jill is a part of so many different programs and facilities here in Colorado. And if you're in another state, I'm sure she can help you find other resources in other states as well. So again, Jill, I just want to thank you for being on, sharing your real life after story. And I look forward to obviously staying in touch with you. I'm blessed to know you over the years. And I just hope that we can reach a lot of people and help a lot of people going forward in the future.
Thanks again, Marcus.
All right. Thanks, Jill. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for listening today. Please do me a huge favor and make sure you subscribe to Life After. If you could leave a rating and share this show with friends and family, this will help us reach more people who may need the help. It could even save their life.